Hi everyone, it's Donna here from Succeed with Dyslexia, and I have the pleasure to spend some time chatting with Dr. Jenna Kenyani, who is Equality, Diversity and Inclusion and Wellbeing Manager, I think it is. Advisor, thank you, at the Faculty of Health and
Life Sciences.
Thank you, at the University of Liverpool. So we are here in Liverpool with Jenna. And Jenna, thank you so much for helping me with that job title.
It's a mouthful.
But it's a brilliant title. Now, some of your work at Liverpool University is to make sure that the projects and the work that you guys do there is really inclusive and, I guess, celebrates the many different diverse needs and talents of your community at Liverpool University. Is that a fair reflection of what you do there?
Yeah, definitely. Like trying to make not just the culture more inclusive and support our staff in their well-being, to make sure that we are doing the best when we're recruiting people, to make sure we've got the most diverse scientists, the most diverse professional service staff, so that we're getting like a real mix of people. Because I think the better the mix is, the better the work we do, and that's the same in any profession and definitely in science research. So yeah, so that's what I aspire to do. But you know, as with everything, it takes time to kind of get there. So it is an uphill challenge, but yeah. That's where we hope to get to.
Fantastic. And actually, you're so well placed for that role beyond your academic qualifications, because one of the reasons obviously we wanted to chat with you is we know that you've got a journey around your own dyslexia, and you've been very courageous actually in the story that you shared about yourself. So beyond all your expertise professionally, I wonder if you could give us an overview of your life so far around dyslexia and that journey that you've been on.
Yeah, of course. So I got diagnosed when I was 11 with dyslexia. Probably knew way before that, but didn't know what was wrong with me. And so when I got that diagnosis, there was a bit of me that was relieved, but there was also quite a lot of anxiety that came with that, not feeling different, feeling out of place. And that definitely kind of has had a big impact on my whole kind of career journey, I think. I was really good at science, and I did that at school, and I went on to do that at university, and then I went on to do a PhD. And although a lot of it was because I was really driven by science and research, I think there was definitely an element to all of that of constantly trying to prove that I was clever, constantly trying to prove that I was good enough. And after my PhD, I did have a little bit of that sense of like, finally, maybe I'm clever now. And I went on to do science research, and I did cancer research for about 7 years. And that's actually when I really started to sort of struggle with my dyslexia. I think through education, I had been particularly lucky that I had a fair amount of support, definitely not enough, but I was luckier than some people that I got some support. When I suddenly was not in education anymore, and I had to just kind of get on with it, it really kind of hit me, and I really felt that sense of not feeling good enough again. And I really started struggling with my confidence, with my ability, and academia is a very difficult place to work. There's a lot of pressure. There is a lot of like having to prove yourself. These incredibly clever people suffer with imposter syndrome. So imagine already having something that makes you feel not quite good enough. And a lot of it was about memory and writing and reading and everything that I struggled with. And during that time, I started to struggle with my mental health. And I ended up sort of taking some time off work and different things, and I tried lots of different types of counselling and therapy through the NHS and different things. Nothing quite was fitting. I put a lot of it down to the academic environment rather than anything else. And I kind of struggled for a long time with that. I eventually decided to leave academia because I thought that was playing a part, and I moved into something called public engagement. So it's explaining research to the public. And I finally sort of really felt more myself. I didn't have to do as much writing and reading. So some of those pressures kind of lifted, and it definitely seemed to help my mental health a little bit. And I was able to do things that I had that fit my set of skills. But at that point, I hadn't really registered that any of this had anything to do with my dyslexia. And it wasn't until sort of about maybe 3 years ago, I decided to pay for some private therapy. I was still struggling. I was going through dips, and it's the job. It wasn't just the job anymore. There must be other things going on. And so I paid for. I was very fortunate. I could afford to pay for some therapy, and just by coincidence, the therapist that I ended up getting happened to also be dyslexic, and I can only describe that moment as life-changing. She just got me in a way that other people hadn't really ever got me. And I started to realise that so many of those issues that I had in my work life and in my personal life and with my mental health, so much of them had actually revolved around being neurodivergent and seeing the world in a different way. But not just that, constantly feeling different, constantly feeling like I wasn't good enough, had this massive impact. And she got all of that, like no one else did, but it was more than that. She didn't just get those feelings, she also got how my brain worked. We started being able to talk in pictures, not just in words. So when I was trying to explain to her how I felt about something, I might explain it with a description of what that looked like in my head, like what the image came to me, and she would kind of describe things back with another image. And for someone that isn't neurodivergent, I think that sounds really kind of obscure, but for me it was like I'd met someone that spoke my language. It was honestly, it was like one of the most kind of breakthrough moments. Yes. Yeah, it really was. And it's really like since that moment, like I definitely, my mental health has been impacted finally in a positive way. I finally feel like therapy is actually working for me. But that made me very passionate about all of this. So I've given a lot of talks about mental health in general.
And that's where we first met, because I heard your inspirational talk at the Dyslexia show. And it was so powerful, Jen, and that's why I thank you on a personal level for being so brave about this before I start getting emotional, but also for the community as well, really. So carry on, because I'm just gonna. I do give a lot of mental health talks, and some of the talks that I've given, and if anyone's interested, I've got one of my mental health talks is on YouTube, and that's just there. Where can we find that, Jenna?
If you Google my name on YouTube, it comes up.
And we'll link to that as well on the back of this video.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's just about mental health, and that's sort of me giving a really open and honest kind of talk about what it's like to live with mental health issues and work with them. But that was actually before I realised that some of it was linked to being neurodivergent, so it focuses on that. And now I've kind of shifted, and I'm doing more talks about trying to raise awareness about being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world, but also that impact of having a neurodivergent therapist. Yes. And actually raising the question, is our therapy designed for neurodivergent people? And it's not, I don't think. And it wasn't until I had someone that was able to kind of see that wasn't fitting for her clients. And she actually now predominantly has neurodivergent clients. Just naturally, those are the people that fit with her, because that's the way she does it. And we talk actually, like sometimes we don't always have therapy sessions. We sit there and chat about therapy and inclusion and dyslexia and how it has an impact. And so that's my very long-winded story.
No, it's so powerful. And like I said, you're very brave, because a lot of people don't share these stories for fear of stigma and shame and so on. So honestly, really thank you for that. I just want to unpack a few things, because there's so much there that, is really powerful, I think. Firstly, you spoke about, if I can paraphrase, almost not being a good fit for the academic journey that lay on, and you pulled away and went in a slightly different direction. At what point, was it through your therapist then that you thought, actually, it's not me, it's because I have dyslexia, and the way that academia is built is not necessarily good for me and getting the best out of me? Had you figured that out already, Jenna, or was it through your therapist that you thought, hang on a minute, The system needs to change, not me.
Yeah. A little bit of both. So I think I had already started to realise that it wasn't the right fit for me, but more in a kind of negative way. So I was like, I'm not good enough. So I use that term a lot, and because for me that phrase, it feels like it has haunted me for quite a lot of my life, and I think it's a really powerful phrase to feel like that your whole life, and to be struggling with that. And academia definitely kind of compounded some of those feelings that had come about when I was, 6, 5, 6. I can remember those feelings. So there was definitely that negative kind of connotation where I'm not good enough to be in academia. It's not set up for me, but not because they're wrong, because I'm wrong, because I don't fit and I'm not good enough.
That as well as being a woman with dyslexia, that internalising, the looking inwards, I'm not good enough, rather than thinking actually the system is not right here.
Yeah, I think it probably adds an element to it, because within academia there is, like in a couple of other sectors, it is more difficult for women as well. So there is probably an element of it, but knowing other neurodivergent people within academia, I think often neurodivergent people are, there's this big picture thinking that we talk about quite a lot now, and I know there's been a big push about dyslexic thinking recently and in LinkedIn, which is fantastic, and it is a positive. Such a positive, but I think that's broad for me personally. I think it's broader than just dyslexics. I think it's neurodivergent thinking, and I think a lot of people do this big picture thinking, and I think that also allows you to kind of self-analyze a lot more. And I know a lot of dyslexics, that male and female, that do constantly critique themselves and look at themselves and look at their environment and feel like they're a bit different and they don't fit in, and that they constantly feel like they've got to prove themselves. And I think so much of that comes from probably the educational system. Like as a child, being forced to learn like in a way that doesn't fit and perform in a way that doesn't fit, and you are assessed with how good your writing is. You're assessed on how good your memory is. Sorry, like how much you can remember. You're doing like exams from such an early age, and that doesn't fit with the dyslexic. For some neurodivergent people, like it's not as big a problem, but for a lot of neurodivergent people, the way the education system is set up just doesn't fit the way we learn and work and express ourselves. So I think I definitely feel like I remember feeling from a young age that I just felt different, and that started driving that kind of be better, try harder, overcome it kind of feelings. And I know, and so I really struggled with owning my dyslexia for a long time. I was embarrassed about it. I kind of wanted to overcome it. I wanted to get better. I know from other conversations with other people that are dyslexic, they're like, no, I'm not that bad. I'm not that dyslexic, because it's almost shameful to be that dyslexic. It's almost, that would, if you're really dyslexic, then that means you're not going to succeed. That means you're stupid because you can't read. That means you're stupid because you can't pass your exams, or you can't write as well as everyone else. And everything in society is set up for words.
Yes, it is. Yes.
From
even science, where you think that this is beyond words.
Absolutely
it's
not.
Still, language based, isn't it? That's how we share ideas.
Yeah, and you have to write a thesis. You have to write papers and grant applications. But you go further than that. I've recently been trying to kind of set up a bit of a sort of a side business. I'm doing some more professional speaking. I want to kind of do some EDI consultancy work and things like that. And I want to promote myself on social media. Every element of social media involves words.
Right. Yeah.
Even Instagram, which is supposed to be pictures, is words. So that formats where it's oral, where I can do videos, YouTube, and even branching out to now TikTok and videos on Instagram, that kind of plays into my skill set more. But yeah, so for a long time I didn't really own my dyslexia. I felt really ashamed of it. And then it was so I kind of wanted to leave academia because I knew I didn't fit, because there was something wrong with me. And then meeting my therapist, she has changed my way of thinking, and now I feel really proud of being dyslexic. I feel proud of the skill sets that I have that other people don't have. And then the fact that there are things that are happening, like the dyslexia thinking as a skill set on LinkedIn. I mean, that's like mind blowing for me. That's so exciting to be like, you know what? Yes, I have this skill set, and it's something that has never been valued before. And when I started doing that, I started kind of, I guess, pushing myself into areas that I excelled in, and not dismissing that they were something I excel at. So for me, public speaking is something that I really enjoy, and I've probably always been pretty good at it. But I've always dismissed it. That's not really a skill. That doesn't make you intelligent. That's just, I know that's easy for me, but no one marks you on giving a talk.
And it's that minimising all the time of your talents, that internal dialogue, I guess, of how you talk to yourself, isn't it? Which chips away at how you feel about yourself.
Oh, definitely. And I still struggle with it now. And I'm still seeing my therapist, and it's years of this that I've got to overcome.
It's a long journey, Jenna, isn't it? Because you've got so much to unpick. You spoke about your childhood.
Yeah.
That's a long while to kind of unpick and reflect upon, isn't it?
100%. And this is why I think we need to be talking more and more about the impact that this has on people's mental health, because this is something that if we don't support our children in our education system, then the long-term effects are as effect on them for their whole lives. And that's not okay when we can do something about it. And then, we put children in a position that the education system isn't right for them. So for me, for example, if I talk about myself, because I'm not going to talk about everyone, but I was in a situation where though I went to a fantastic secondary school and they tried to be as supportive as they could, there were definitely teachers that weren't. And they definitely continued to impact me. But the education system itself wasn't set up for someone like me. And so it was this constant reinforcement that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't going to achieve, I wasn't going to get anywhere. And so obviously this continuously had an impact on my mental health. And then when I did struggle with mental health issues, then the therapy wasn't right for me.
Yes.
And I did so many different types of counselling, CBT, all sorts, and nothing felt like it quite fit my brain. It felt like I was speaking to people and they didn't understand. I was often getting given homework.
That's right, there's writing journals, which is obviously...
It's like, it doesn't work for my brain. And like I said, I am constantly a big picture thinker. Like my head is always whizzing around, and it's got all of these different things, and all of these therapists would be like, no, you don't want to think about all of it, bring it. And I'm like, I just
the opposite
can't.
Yeah.
It's like, I understand that makes sense that you do that, but you need to understand that that's logic. That's just how my brain functions. And so when I work with my therapist, she gets that. She's allowed me to find new ways to not get overwhelmed by all the big picture thinking and to bring it back, but without having to get rid.
Yes.
Without having, being like, okay, this is how you work. Let's work with the way your brain works and still get you to kind of deal with the anxiety that comes with that big picture thinking.
Because Jenna, actually, and this is why, when I first heard you speak, and you are a brilliant speaker, such a powerful one, and I've been around the dyslexia community for decades now, but you made me think about therapy, and your initial experiences with therapy were, you're alluding to the fact that the way it was presented, as wonderful as it is for some individuals, was not dyslexia friendly, not neurodiverse friendly.
Yeah.
So actually, it just didn't work for you, and obviously until you met your fantastic therapist who gets you and understands. If you don't mind, this may be too personal for you to answer, and please don't if you feel uncomfortable. Before you got to your brilliant therapist and you were on that more traditional journey, I'm guessing that made you feel almost, what's going to work for me? Is that too personal for you to share those thoughts?
No, not at all.
So?
No, it was really hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard, and I felt, again, it was just like, it was like compounding these feelings of there's something wrong with me. So it was a good 10 years of struggling before I met my current therapist. That was 10 years of battling these awful thoughts, really bad depression and really bad anxiety, and constantly feeling like I was a failure at everything. I hated myself. Like, I hated everything about myself, and then I couldn't get better. And going to, I'd go to try the counselling, and I would really want it to work, and I'd go and I'd try my hardest, and it wouldn't work. And I knew it wasn't working because I knew there was, again, something wrong with me. Again, why wasn't my brain just working? Other people go to therapy sessions, they go and have a bit of CBT and they'd be fine. And all I seem to do is getting worse. So then I'd stop and I'd try and be okay for a while, and then I'd get really bad again, and I'd have to go back to therapy. And it was just like, what's the point? Because I know it's not going to work. I got all of the antidepressants on the market, nothing, that didn't work. And it got to a point where I felt like I had no hope, and I did have I had a full breakdown, and I had to take quite a bit of time off work, and I honestly feel like I would never want even my worst enemy to go through what I went through. But because I've been through so much, that's why I'm so passionate now, because I'm like, there is so much we should be doing, there's so much we could be doing so that other people don't go through this. If the therapy was right, if people understood that the therapy wasn't set up for neurodivergent people, that maybe I would have got better after a year and not 10 years. If more people had been understanding from a young age, if my support system had been different from a young age, if my workplace had been more supportive, like all of those things, all they did was constantly make me feel like I was worthless, that I was not good enough, that I was never going to amount to anything.
In some way.
Oh, 100%, yeah. Like I always felt like I was on the outside, looking in on this group of people that just could live easily and just do everything. And I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, why? And I remember every time I succeeded, people would be like, oh, that's fantastic. And you've done it, and you're dyslexic, you must be really proud. And all I kept thinking, rather than being proud, all I kept thinking is, oh, imagine what I could have done if I wasn't dyslexic.
Yeah.
Because I never felt like that was an achievement, because I was still always less than.
Yes. And although I guess people meant well in phrasing that to you, it takes the shine off some of it, maybe, by saying, you've done great, and you've got dyslexia, as if it's something almost to be ashamed of, or like you say, you're broken in some way.
Yeah, and sometimes it wasn't.
Even though it's
really well-meaning.
Malicious or anything.
And sometimes actually it was quite powerful for me to hear that, because there were times when people wouldn't say that, and it would be like, oh, well done. Also, that person's done better, and you're like, well, hang on a minute, that person doesn't have dyslexia, that person doesn't have a short-term memory problem, actually my achievements do mean more. Not more, that isn't the right term, but it means something to me,
to overcome sometimes, isn't it?
And sometimes the smaller achievements meant so much more to me. For example, when you do a PhD, you have to write a thesis at the end of it, but you also have to do a viva. So that's like an oral exam where you get quizzed on your thesis by usually 2 examiners. For most people, that once they do that, that's the big achievement, because that's obviously when you've passed.
Yeah.
After that, and you find out if you've passed or you've got corrections and stuff. For me, I had a bigger celebration the day I handed in my thesis, because
Interesting.
writing that thesis meant so much more. I almost didn't care at that point if I passed or I failed, because I'd just written an 80,000 word document. Like, this is insane for someone like me to think that I could ever even achieve that. So I was just, and also I think probably looking back now, maybe there is this confidence which I wasn't allowing myself to kind of recognize at the time, but I was like, oh, well, I'll pass the viva. You know, like, I could do that bit. You know, that's nothing on what I've just achieved. So it's like little things like that, like, and no one.
And that's not a little thing, isn't it? That's not a little.
It's not a little thing, but that was in academia. That wasn't the bit that everyone's like, oh, well done for it. Yeah, everyone, yeah, great, you've written a thesis, but people didn't celebrate the way I did when I'd written it, and unless they were close friends to me, they didn't understand what that meant to me.
Yes. Where did that come in your journey then, the thesis and so on? Was that when you were, I mean, the 10 years just makes me shudder, and I'm so lost in admiration for you, because that's such a long time to struggle, and I can just imagine how strong you are to get through that. Did the thesis and so on, did that milestone come within that time, Jenna? Because that makes it even more of an achievement, isn't it?
So I say 10 years because I got diagnosed with depression and anxiety whilst I was doing my PhD. So a couple of years before I'd wrote my thesis. That's when it was starting to have an impact on my life, and I was struggling to get in to do my PhD, get into work and things like that. And also I have to remember that was at a time when those words weren't really talked about that often, you know.
There's still a lot of stigma now, even though.
There is a lot of stigma, but then it was almost like I hadn't really even heard about other people suffering with depression. Like, it was, you know, I didn't know where to turn to, where to go for support, you know, or anything. The reality is that I probably been struggling with mental health issues way before that.
Yes.
I definitely had anxiety at school. I definitely struggled with my anxiety, my mental health around the exam periods at university. You know, now I look back and I'm like, it's so obvious. You know, I would shut myself away in my bedroom for like a month before my exams. I would hardly eat. I would be in fits of tears. I'd be on the phone to my mum. I'd be like on the floor crying. I would, just at the thought of having to do these exams. Then at that point, it almost felt like that was just kind of like, oh, that's just what I go through when exams happen, because I had the same at school. Now,
had you made the connection it was partly because of your dyslexia at that point, or you thought the two were separate? No,
I mean, I knew that I struggled with exams because of my dyslexia. I knew that was a thing, and so that's probably why I didn't ever seek help for the way I reacted to exams, because I felt like, well, the only reason that I'm having like these episodes, we call them, was because I'm dyslexic, which means that I'm really crap at exams, which means that I'm gonna like have a breakdown about doing the exams because I'm just rubbish. Whereas looking back now I know what I do about mental health issues. I'm like, I was struggling with really severe anxiety issues from a teenager that became unbearable at the time of an exam because it was triggering some trauma for me, really. And I wasn't seeking any help because I felt like that was just normal for someone like me.
Yes.
So the concept of time is weird. So it's 10 years officially. I would say it's probably 15, 20 years, you know, that I have struggled, like nearly all my life.
Yeah.
And it makes me really sad thinking about my younger self not understanding that wasn't normal.
Yeah.
And that I lost so much of my youth feeling like I wasn't good enough. And that's been something that I have really been very appreciative of my therapist helping support me through a lot of that, and understanding it and accepting it, and letting go of it.
Yes. It's healing.
Yeah.
It? And this is why we wanted to talk to you, because there will be people who are going to listen to this conversation, younger people and older people who, you know, what you've been through, and the light at the end of the tunnel will be so, we hope, inspiring to them. And that's why we thank you for this bravery, Jenna, because sorry. I knew this was going to happen. I mean, it's upsetting because it matters so much. I'm going to try and become positive. Do we feel optimistic about where we're going?
Yes.
I'll compose myself while you talk for that for a few minutes.
I'm going to not look at you so I don't start crying. No, do you know what? What's really nice for me at the moment where I am is that I actually, for the first time in probably my whole life, I feel really positive.
Yes.
Okay. And not just positive about my mental health, like about myself, and like the fact that I finally feel like so I'm gonna go into true dyslexic moment.
Yes, go for it.
I had to do this. I recently had to describe how I was feeling in a picture form, and for me, the best way I can describe it is like I have been stood slightly like in the shadows. I've been there. I've been present. I've been in all the rooms, and you know, doing what I needed to do. But I've always felt like I've just been surrounded by this black cloud. Not even that. It's not like I'm standing in the corner. Just like I'm there. I'm in the midst. I'm trying to do my best job, but just covered in shadow and darkness, just surrounding me. And at the moment, it feels like the clouds are breaking and that light is kind of coming through, and I feel like I am. Forget the rest of the world and what they look at me. That I'm seeing myself.
Fantastic.
And that I'm going, you know what? You're not that bad.
No.
You're all right.
You're pretty good.
And I talked about this at the Dyslexia show. For me, it's turning that I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I am good enough.
Yeah.
I am, and I'm finally realizing that I am, and I'm really proud of the things that it's. Even all of the struggle that I've had, the mental health, the dyslexia, everything that I've had to battle, like I'm proud of who that's made me.
Yes.
And I don't want anyone else to go through that. But I am learning to kind of accept all of that in me, and I do feel positive.
Yeah, which is brilliant. And I guess as well, you know, other than your academic achievements and so on, this is what makes you great at your job. You know, you've got the best job title in the world. Let me get it right: equality, diversity, inclusion, and well-being. There's not one word there, Jenna, I don't like, isn't it? The well-being and so on. You know of what you speak of. Because you've lived it as well, you know, all the academic reasons why that stuff's important, but also, you know, the lived experience as well.
And I think anyone can do, obviously, any job, you know, you don't have to have lived experience to do this kind of job, but I do think it adds an extra element to it. I have the lived experience, not just from the Wellbeing, but from not feeling included, from not having things accessible, from, you know, being in situations where there is no one else with a disability at the table, and you are the person that's constantly trying to sort of overcome something to show that you deserve that seat at the table. And so although I definitely can't speak for everyone that's got a diversity issue or an inclusion issue, etc. What it has done is made me really passionate and maybe understand a little of how people feel when they don't feel like they are welcome in an environment.
Yes.
And that is what's really driving me to push for change. And I think it has, definitely my experiences have given me that extra an extra element to the experience, to that role.
Yes.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no. And this is, as I say, why we were so anxious to talk to you, because we knew this was going to be a really powerful conversation, and it really is. So as we draw to the end of our time, for anybody listening to this, what would you like to share with them? Bearing in mind it's youngsters, it's older people, wherever they're at on the journey. You talk so eloquently about your journey so far. What's the message to those listening to this about, if they feel maybe where you were a couple of years ago, not quite to the happier place yet?
I would definitely say that you are good enough. That would be my number one thing that I would want to say to everyone, is that you really are good enough, and that you have an amazing set of skills that maybe you don't understand yet, but there are going to be times when you struggle, and there are going to be times when this world is not set up for people like us, and that is okay.
Yes.
And when and if you struggle, reach out, make sure you get the help, and make sure it's right. So if people have got mental health issues and they are dyslexic or neurodivergent, then seek out and ask for if people have got experience in helping neurodivergent people. Ask for someone else. Ask if there's a therapist that is neurodivergent. I know not everyone is in a position to pay for it themselves, but there might be people in the NHS, there might be that are. And if you are a therapist out there, if you are an educator of therapists, make sure that you're making it accessible for neurodivergents, because without them, they can't support other people like that. If we make therapy accessible, then that's only going to go on to help other people. But I think more than anything, it's that feeling of making sure that you value who you are and your skill set, and maybe it doesn't fit in with society's traditional things, traditional way of assessing how good someone is. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because we all have amazing skills, and it doesn't matter if you're neurodivergent or you're neurotypical, right? Every single person has a set of skills that makes them unique and makes them amazing, and you've got to find out what those skills are and then own them.
Yes, love it.
And feel like you are good enough.
Yeah. Well, Jenna, it's always such a pleasure to listen to you speak. You are an amazing woman. So thank you. I can't say that enough. And I love what you've said to our listeners about, okay, what do we do now? Some of the things that you've shared, we will link to for those who want to find out more.
If you want to find out more about some of the talks I've done, like I said, you can find me on YouTube. If you Google my name, Jenna Kenyani, there's a variety of talks that come up. Some that I did during the pandemic, and then one professional talk on mental health. You can also find me on LinkedIn if you want to sort of find a bit more about what I'm currently doing, or contact me about working with me. I give a lot of professional talks, and I'm also, like I mentioned, starting to do a bit of EDI consultancy, so I'm happy to kind of take some questions or opportunities to work with you. And you can find me on Twitter as well, and I hopefully will be launching my Instagram soon, Not Good Enough Girl, and so I'm going to hopefully kind of do a bit more talking about that, and fingers crossed potentially my own podcast soon, so watch this space, but feel free to contact me and through any of those channels.
And if you have been affected by the things that we've spoken about today, please know that you're not on your own. It's certainly affected me, this conversation. And we will put links that will help you and support in our chat for the video that we share as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video as much as we did putting it together. Now we have some more amazing content for you. Please feel free to click this link here and learn more about Jamie Baker, who works as an educational therapist. Jamie talks about some of the successes and obstacles she's seen as she's worked with individuals who have learning differences. If you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.